What's up, everybody? Welcome to LaughNapkin. Today I have 3 stories for episode 18 of r/MaliciousCompliance. And our first story is, CEO didn't understand what my department did, apparently. And after that we have, give her anything she wants, for free? Okay. And our third and final story is, don't build a project? Okay. Enjoy doing my work then. So let's just jump right into it. CEO didn't understand what my department did, apparently. Some backstory. I was a general troubleshooter for my company. My job involved a lot of traveling to different clients we support. My area of work is Ontario, Canada, where I'm based out of, and some of the nearby states in the United States: New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Pennsylvania. I did most of my traveling by car since my schedule can change quite quickly and flying can become very expensive. I had one colleague who was technically my subordinate, but we have a very good working relationship and would often handle calls independently of each other and only check in by phone once a week and in person once a month or when necessary. A little over a year ago, I get an email calling me to head office in New York City for a meeting with the CEO and the board of directors regarding my job. I checked with my colleague and he got the same email. So we make our travel plans and meet in New York City the following week. We have dinner together the night before our meeting and can't figure out between us what the issue is about. It's rare to get summoned to the head office and more rare for things to be so vague. When we go into the meeting the next day, we're informed that the company is dividing our department between the US and Canada and that there would be a new person to deal with the US clients, and we were to restrict ourselves to Canada. Both my colleague and I were a little shocked at this since neither of us had even heard this was being discussed. I asked who the new person for the US was, and we learned that it was a new hire that the CEO had taken a special interest in. Trying to be of good spirit, I offered to train the new person. There are many realities of the job that are not in the job description. The CEO accepted and then brought in the new hire. In walks a young lady who looks about 23 years old and wears an expression that she knows everything. She sits at the table and immediately makes it very clear that she wants nothing to do with us. Let's meet our cast. CEO is going to be referred to as Bob. New hire will be Karen. My colleague will be Jim. Bob: welcome, Karen. We have just informed OP and Jim about the change in structure, and they are willing to give you the support you need to get yourself started. Karen and Bob both look at me. Me: glad to have you aboard, Karen. I think both Jim and I have a lot of experience to share with you, and we're happy to do so. Perhaps it would be better in a separate meeting so we don't have to take the board's time. Karen: thank you all. I have a lot of ideas about how I can streamline our department and new policies I can introduce that should save the company a lot of money and expenses. I'm very confused at this point. Karen is speaking as though she's my supervisor, and that is distinctly not what Bob spoke to us about. I can see some of the board members giving strange looks at this as well. Me: Bob, perhaps I misunderstood the new roles here. Would you please clarify? Bob: sure. Karen is the new head of your department, and both you and Jim will answer directly to her. Board member: that isn't what we discussed or approved as a board. We weren't fully convinced of dividing the department, but this is completely against what we discussed. Karen: what did you discuss then? Board member: that your department would be divided between the US and Canada. OP and Jim would remain north of the border and you would run the US. Karen: that's not what I was told, but I can work with that, as long as these two stay out of my way, indicating me and Jim. Jim and I are both shocked and insulted to be spoken of in this manner. We're both very good at our jobs and before today have never seen this woman in our lives. Bob: that settles it. OP, effective immediately, you and Jim are to have nothing to do with Karen. Do not interfere with her work at all. You are both to restrict yourselves to working within Canada only." With that, he ended the meeting and left the room with Karen close behind him. Jim and I sat there stunned for a moment, and some of the board members came up to us to express their shock and sympathies about this. I had enough presence of mind to ask if we would get a written directive of this change and was assured we would. Sure enough, both Jim and I got emails with the new directive from Bob by the end of the day. So after sending an email to all of our US-based clients advising them of the change and giving them the contact information of Karen, Jim and I made our way back to Toronto and reorganized ourselves for working within Ontario only. This meant much less traveling for us, so it gave us more room to breathe. Within a week, I was getting complaints from our US-based clients that Karen was not answering emails and missing appointments. I forwarded these emails to Karen and copied the entire board, including Bob. Another week later, I get a phone call from Karen who sounds frantic, but will not admit that she needs help. She makes pleasant conversation and then asks how I would handle a particular type of situation. I tell her I'm really not interested in discussing work, as it might be seen as interfering in her work. Later that evening, I get a call from Jim telling me that he had the same conversation with Karen and handled it the same way. By the end of the month, I get a call from Bob asking if I would take over the entire department again. I politely tell him no, since I didn't want to interfere with Karen and her role. For the next 3 months, I'm getting emails and phone calls from US clients asking if they can have me back as their contact. This confirms an idea that had been in my head. Jim and I had actually grown our client base in Ontario since restricting ourselves here. So I had lunch with Jim one day and asked him if he wanted to go into business with me as partners, starting our own consulting firm. We couldn't provide everything our current company provided, but we could provide a high degree of professionalism for our specific field, and it seemed we already had a ready-made client base. By the end of lunch, he was on board, and we started the necessary steps to get ourselves set up. As soon as we were clear, we both submitted our resignations with explanations of why. The next time clients contacted us, we told them we no longer worked for the company. When they asked if we still worked in the field, we told them we had established our own firm and what services we offered. A month later, we had 60% of our US clients on board, and since the former company had no Canadian support at all, we had 80% of the Canadian clients. Within 2 months after that, we had 80% of the US and 90% of the Canadian clients. In the years since that time, our new company has grown enough that we have hired 7 new consultants. Jim and I find ourselves doing more office work than road work and a lot of client courting. Our old company has had to stop offering the in-person troubleshooting, what our department did, and Bob was fired by the board. No idea what happened to Karen. Give her anything she wants for free? Okay. Hello, this is my first time posting in this part of Reddit. I only recently discovered it and have a rather long story from my days working at a convenience store that fits this place perfectly. I used to work for a convenience store about 21 to 22 years ago. Let's call it 812. At the time I joined them, they were still a division of the Southland Corporation. I ended up working for them for exactly 1 year, 7 months, and 11 days on the button. A very strange coincidence. Anyway, on to the malicious compliance. So I come in one day around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and the manager is not there. She has already went home, but left a note. The very first thing she wanted is for me to get straight on the register without delay, as the coworker that was leaving was getting very close to overtime, which is not allowed. No problem, right? Well, there is a small problem. We only had 1 register running at the time, with a single till, and the store was packed with customers. I couldn't just hop on the register. The coworker that was leaving had to count her drawer down, and I then had to recount up the drawer to make sure that it was the correct amount of cash in it. The drawer was supposed to have a specific amount of money in it. The coworker had to count it down to that specific amount, then log what she had remaining to see if there was a discrepancy of her total sales from her shift. Meanwhile, I had to count it up to the specific amount to make sure that she did not make a mistake counting it. All of this had to be done before I could take over the drawer. Following the manager's order, we start the process as soon as I show up, and inform the customers in the store that there would be a brief holding time while we counted down the drawer and switched the shift. You could hear the moans from the people. Clearly no one wanted to wait. But what could they do besides get into line and wait? Right? So there's this one lady. She was complaining under her breath at first. She was about the 8th or 9th customer back in line, of about 25 to 30 people. The store was freaking packed. No joke. I was ignoring pretty much everyone at first, just trying to get through the counting process as fast as possible so I could start ringing people up. As my coworker was completing her counting and handing the drawer to me, the lady got louder and louder in her complaining, to the point where she was using normal speaking voice, like she was talking to other people in the crowd, no longer complaining under her breath. I was counting as fast as possible at this point, but she switched from just stating her complaints randomly to intentionally edging on the other customers. She was trying to get them to agree with her and start a riot in the store, saying things like, "We shouldn't have to wait this long for service, should we?" And "We should get our stuff for free for waiting, right?" to other customers in line. I noticed that some people are starting to nod their heads at her provocations. At this point, I stopped counting and said out loud, "I apologize for the brief wait, but please understand that we're required to count down our drawers to prevent losses and theft from occurring. I'm trying to count as fast as possible. It'll just be 1 more minute, and then I can start serving people. Thank you for your patience," and went back to counting. Well, while that quelled most of the people in line who were starting to fidget and shuffle nervously, that just made things worse with the lady. She flippin' blew up and started yelling, "She shouldn't have to wait for service. She should get her slushie and sandwich for free," and then she started throwing cuss words around. Mother effer this, F that, left and right. I stopped counting again and looked right up at her and told her, "Please ma'am, stop using profanity in our store. There are a lot of children present." Since there were mostly families in the store, there were about 7 or 8 kids. Again, that just made things even worse. Nothing but a non-stop stream of profanity started spewing from her mouth, at this point screaming at the top of her lungs. I finished counting my drawer as I told her if she doesn't stop, she will not be served, and that she'll be asked to leave the store. I'm trying to protect the kids in the store at this point, and the line has already shrunk down to 15 people because of people walking out and leaving because of this lady. Well, she took that personally, apparently. She started with the, "You are gonna serve me, and I will not leave until I'm ready" speech. So I glared at her and said, "Oh, really?" I then promptly told her to leave as I started to ring people up. I told her that I was not serving her and for her to put down her merchandise and get out. Then came the, "You can't make me" line, and she literally walked up past the other people in front of her, moving them out of her way, and she stepped right up to the counter. I repeated myself. I told her to put down the slushie and sandwich and told her that I was not serving her, and if she did not leave, that I would call the police. Long story short, I did have to call the police, but she left before they arrived. Now, you're probably wondering, so where's the malicious compliance? That came the next day. You see, just 15 minutes after the lady left the store, the district manager calls me on the phone and yells at me, "Did you just call the police on a paying customer?" He doesn't let me get in a single word before he starts ranting about customer service, this and that, and informs me that the lady will be returning to the store the next day and that I'll be apologizing to her in person and I will be giving her whatever she wants for free. The next day I come in and the manager is waiting to call me into the office where I receive a write-up for talking back to a customer and kicking them out without a valid reason. The manager doesn't let me get in a single word to explain what happened. She then informs me that when the lady arrives, I will apologize and then anything the lady places on the counter, she gets for free. I was honestly stupefied by this. I planned on waiting for the lady to show up and telling her to F off and then quitting and walking out of the store, leaving no one there. That was my plan. It didn't go that way though. Hours later, after the manager had went home, I was running the register when the lady walks in, with her father and husband and cousin and sister and several kids in tow. They all grab our shopping baskets and start filling them up, as she comes up to me and says, "I was told by your boss that I can get whatever I want for free." When I see this, I'm like, no way. She doesn't think she's going to be getting everything in her whole clan for free, does she? I told her to hold on just a moment, and I call the manager at home. She is pissed that I bothered her, and doesn't let me get out any more than, "The lady is here, The manager yells at me, telling me that she has already instructed me, and I try again. "Right, but she's here with..." The manager yells at me again. "Do you want to be fired? Just apologize to her and give her whatever she wants." I smile. "You want me to give her whatever she wants? For free? Are you certain?" The manager yells back, "Are you stupid? Do you not hear me?" "Yes, ma'am. As you wish." When the lady finally makes it to the counter, I do a very polite bow to her and apologize, making it sound as sincere as possible. I wanted to punch the smug grin right off her face, but I kept it to myself and started ringing up the items in the basket that she was setting on the counter. I explained to her that I had to ring them up first and then cash out the order so there was a receipt. $780 worth of stuff. I was laughing so hard on the inside. The next day when I showed up, the store manager, the regional manager, the district manager, and one of our company's loss prevention officers were all waiting for me. As I was led directly into the office, I explained that the district manager had told me to give the lady whatever she wanted for free, and that when the lady came in with her entire family, I called the store manager at home because I was pretty sure that he didn't mean for her whole family to get free stuff. The store manager yells at me, "You didn't tell me her whole family was here trying to get stuff for free." And I calmly responded, "I tried telling you, but you wouldn't listen to me. You called me names and asked if I wanted to be fired, so I did as you told me." They began reviewing the video, which has great audio detection. It was kind of hard to hear the manager. Then when I explained what she was saying, they could make it out. They asked me to leave the room. I could hear the volume of them talking going up and down from yelling to regular talking for another hour before I was asked to come back into the office. The regional manager told me that they had just reviewed the tapes from the afternoon that the incident with the lady took place. And he apologized to me and said that the lady had called the office and made up a whole pack of lies about what had happened, and that the district manager had not reviewed the tape before calling me. I was told that if the district manager had done his job properly, none of this mess would have happened. I was then told that the lady was permanently banned from our store. If she returned, to call the police and have her arrested for trespassing. That's the end of it. I never did see the lady again, and just 2 weeks later, we had a new district manager and a new store manager. I still love thinking about that to this day. I'm so glad that I didn't just tell her to F off and walk out. Don't build a project? Enjoy doing my work then. I work as an engineer, but I wear many hats, including dealing with billing the client. We bill our time to the projects we work on. My current project was coming to an end in May, and I'm slated to start a new one in June. Now, my project manager receives a bonus for job completion that is directly tied to the profits made on the job. So it's in his best interest to remove excess staff from the job early, so they're not draining anything from the remaining funds in the budget. Anything left over from the staffing budget goes to the profit pool. It's somewhat important for me to mention that this project is located 10 minutes from my house, but the new one is 2 hours away. So I asked my manager to keep me on for a month longer so I had time to vacate my current apartment and move to my new one. At the time, he said sure, no problem. To my dismay, behind my back, he transferred me off a week after my request. I didn't even hear from him. I heard from my new project manager. I was confused and upset, and I decided that while I wouldn't confront him, I certainly wasn't going to make his life any easier for him. One of my remaining tasks was to build a client for the final month. Not a difficult task, but submission is through the client's online portal, which is an antiquated and confusing system to work with. On top of that, the client is a real stickler about making sure the process is correct and that we don't miss deadlines. There are draft submissions, review meetings, and final submissions to worry about, and each step has its own deadlines. Additionally, we have consultants that need to be paid for April's work. I emailed him and asked him who was going to take over this task. I explained to him that it was a lot of work and that I should probably stick around for at least a week or two to show him the process. His response was exactly as I expected. "It's just billing, it's not rocket science, I don't need your help," etc. So, to start my malicious compliance, I did exactly what he said. I left it all alone and forwarded every email related to the project to the manager and patiently waited for the ramifications to kick in. 2 weeks into May, I start getting CC'd on nasty emails from 3 sides. The client, who was getting frustrated that the project manager wasn't following the process correctly and had missed multiple deadlines, the consultants, who hadn't received their pay, and upper management, who didn't understand why, after 3 years of everything running smoothly, they were now receiving threatening emails and calls from the consultants. I got called in by the regional vice president asking why I hadn't properly prepped my manager on the process. It turns out that when the VP questioned my manager, he blamed me. So I showed him the email where I offered to teach him and he rejected. Vice president called my manager and chewed him out right then and there, and asked why he couldn't hold me on for a month more. It wouldn't have even been that big of a cost to the project. After that, vice president asked me to step back in to fix the issue before the end of May. I told him I could do it, but I definitely have to work overtime to make it happen. I got blanket approval for it and worked overtime all week, plus weekends, and I could expense my mileage to go to meetings. I racked up 30 extra hours at 1.5 pay and 40 weekend hours at 2x pay on top of my regular 40 hours per week. I found out today that part of the overtime will be docked from my manager's bonus. So in his quest to earn a tiny more in his bonus from removing me from the project, he ended up losing a crap ton more. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed making it. Don't forget to tell me what you think about these stories and submit your own story in the comment section below. See you guys in the next video.